All right. We are here with Christopher Norris. Christopher Norris started out as a sweaty death metal kid, turned into grindcore, emotive, hardcore extraordinaire. Went on to do a lot of more excellent design work, worked for some companies we're not going to talk about, but also worked for Vice for a great many years. Responsible for the aesthetic legacies of groups like Against Me, might be the most common thing that people think of. He now writes novels under his real name, and just a lot of excellent work. Just came out with The Holy Day, which is not the experimental indie project, but the first feature film that A24 might have picked up for their B team. So Chris, I wanted to say thanks for sitting down. We're talking largely to a class of young people who are starting college, but I'm also going to put this up on, YouTube or whatever. So how are you doing?
Good enough. It's Monday. It's cold in New York finally, after having like an 80-degree day on Saturday for some fucking reason, but global warming, whatever, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But yeah, other than that, I'm good. I'm busy. I'm getting ready to leave for Paris this week for vacation.
Hell yeah.
And yeah, and that's about it,
Not
So
bad.
yeah, thanks for having me.
Of course. Now, let's just get into it. Your work across music, visual art, and writing, the roots in DIY culture are there, and they're laid quite bare, in my opinion, where the line between creator and audience is often blurred. How do you think participating in DIY communities influences the way you choose your medium or the way you approach a project? Do you ever feel that one medium allows you to communicate better with a particular audience or even a discourse community?
Not really. I think that I've tried a lot of different styles, a lot of different modes. It's like mostly like this writing thing is new.
Mm-hmm.
Let's just say that. You know what I mean? So obviously I've been a graphic artist, designer, whatever for almost 30 years now. And oddly enough. And as far as just art goes and then making art for bands, I don't make a lot of, most of my stuff is commercial based.
Mm-hmm.
I don't make a whole lot of work for myself. Other than you could say the books are at this point, but even then I'm not writing a book so that no one can see it.
Mm-hmm.
I'm writing a book so fools read it. But with as far as the art goes, I've definitely tried different styles over the years. I've bounced around. I started as a Xerox artist, and then was like, oh, I want to be Blutch from France or whatever. I want to be this person. So I tried a bunch of different things, and then I've just, we're 30 years in and I'm just a Xerox artist again. So, and realistically, inside of that, I do move here and there depending on the project, but ultimately I always I don't think that there's anything there that makes me think there might be things that I'm going to make, for lack of a better term, I make less punk.
Mm-hmm.
I just worked on Megalopolis, the Francis Ford Coppola thing, doing street team posters or whatever. And but I was hired specifically because of Xeroxy punk looking art. The people over at Utopia were like, we want this.
Mm-hmm.
Because I can clean it up. This is a big deal. You know what I mean? Working on this Francis Ford Coppola thing, maybe the magnum opus, maybe the last thing the guy's got in the fucking tank. So I'm taking it dead serious. And they're like, no, dude, Xerox that shit, bro. So I don't know if there's anything that makes me think that I think I'm answering your question, is that there is no, at this point in time, I'm not out here trying to reinvent the wheel.
Mm-hmm.
I might be trying to dig into the actual work that I'm doing and cleaning it up here and there or whatever, but there's nothing there that makes me think which is funny. Side note is I was working on something today that was totally clean for somebody and it's wasn't punk looking, but in general, I don't think about it that seriously. You know what I mean? And I don't necessarily consider a lot of the times the project, unless it's like, because I guess like ultimately like I don't respect a lot of the people or the work that I do.
Right.
You know what I mean? So when Francis Ford Coppola comes knocking, yeah, I'm like, oh, whoa. Like, let's do something fucking exciting and serious here. And then they were just like, no, dude, fuck off and Beefsteak Mountain. And I was like, oh, what the fuck am I even doing, dude? Now, inside of that, I brought my A game as best I could. And I saw zero difference between my D game. You know what I mean? Between the two. I was like, so if I try really hard and I make this art and it looks like this, and then I look at something I know I phoned the fuck in, I'm like, oh, there's not a lot of difference here, so I should just keep on phoning it in. Which is like not to say that I don't think any of it's good or anything. I just know that at this point in time, as a 47-year-old person who has never made more than essentially, burrito money on making art, is that like maybe my D game is my A game, and like I don't need to try so fucking hard, and I don't, you know what I mean, because I've kind of been at this point where I've just honed it, sharpened it, smoothed it to where you're just like, yeah, it's just, we're just Xeroxing skulls, bro, like that's it, and like the joke I made before we got on is like, yeah, dude, it's like no money in mohawks, but plenty of gas money in skulls.
Right.
And so like, that's a real thing. Like when a band comes to me and is like, we want a t-shirt. I was like, do you want 2 t-shirts? Cause I could do you something very serious, but every band needs a fucking skull t-shirt that's on a fucking black shirt, printed in white, because I promise you, apples to oranges, whatever, it will sell more than everything else on your table. And you will get to the next fucking town. Oh, yeah. It is the most corny of images and one of the most corny of multiple genres of fucking heavy music or not so heavy music or anything that requires a fucking distortion pedal to be made. And like, whether it be noise or death metal or grindcore or fucking, a Desperacidos record or whatever, it doesn't matter. Everybody needs a skull shirt because it will always sell.
Oh, yeah.
So a roundabout way is, I guess, no, I don't. The answer to your question is no, not really. You know what I mean? I'd like to, but I don't think that what I do is as serious as all that. And I try to just not take it as, I don't ever hit it that way because I don't, again, like, I guess ultimately I don't respect what I do. Mm-hmm. And a lot of times I'm friends with a lot of the people who come to me for this work, but I couldn't say that I respect what they do and why they're asking me, Oh, yeah. But also like, we all got to make a living and we all have our stupid interests and like, you know what I mean? And so like, I can't really shine on something that I think is low art because like I make low art. Everybody that makes something stupid and likes something stupid. And as I've gotten older, I just try to become less like, for fun, I'll be judgmental. For fun, I'll razz a fool, chotch some fools for fucking liking garbage. But ultimately, like, I don't give a fuck. I don't care. You want to be a 45-year-old getting your band back together to fucking tour. You know what I mean? Like, I think that that's corny and midlife crisis shit. But also, what the fuck do I know? Because I'm still Xeroxing skulls. You know what I mean? Like, I've been doing it when they tried to fucking, leave the reservation for a bit and go be a fucking adult. And then they realize that they're not excited about their 2 kids or their weird fucking thing, their weird thing that they decided to do in life that wasn't being a punk, whatever career they have. And like, ultimately they're just like, oh shit, I remember when I was 20 and I had no cares. And I put out 2 7-inches on Bloodlink and everybody sort of remembers that on fucking Reddit. You know what I mean? Let's get the band back together. And like, that's awesome, I guess. Like really, if you can punk the system, like one of the greatest examples recently is Orchid. Like I know that Orchid as a band and your students either do not or do not know that, but in the late 90s, early 2000s, there was a band called Orchid, and they are considered to be kind of the diamond of the Screamo era before Screamo was what it is now, which is just Warped Tour.
Yep.
Brides Wore Black or whatever, any of that shit. I don't know. Fucking Motionless in White. I don't know what the fuck Screamo is these days. But like, and so they broke up in 2002 because they all wanted to be adults or be cool or do something, whatever, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And recently got back together, and I can't believe how popular they are because I don't have TikTok, but I know that that's why they were popular. that
Yeah.
growth and that genre and them as a band becoming this iconic thing. And there are a bunch of rather than bands from that era that got back together that like no one gives a fuck about your Ursep Synapses or your your Satias or shit like that like are fine bands, but like the Orchid effect is insane.
Oh yeah.
And like seeing it is, and so I can't punk the boys, and I'm involved in the reunion, so what the fuck do I know? But I can't punk the boys for coming around doing it and being able to make a little bit of fucking scratch that like most bands can't, even as a reunion band. Now, is it tacky, corny, and kind of sad? Yeah, of course it is. But like, so is fucking, I guess, doing anything. So who cares? You know what I mean? Anyways, tangent, on that.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, okay. I answered your question.
Yeah, you did, and to the subtext of it is that this is something that I've kind of explained to my students as we're critically engaging with these ideas of like theories of composition and all this stuff. I have very many times looked at them and gone, y'all already know this shit. You're just learning the names to put to it. You already do it. So it doesn't matter to really ruminate on it that much. Now, as far as reunions, I tend to agree with you on that. And I knew some people who were involved with that usurp synapse deal. And it was, I don't think even like the most Screamo nerds of Screamo nerds I know were just like, what? Why?
Yeah.
Who knows?
That's what I said, but yeah. But then there's like success stories inside of that, like Jerome's Dream.
Yeah.
Who got together before everybody started doing reunions because they were just friends and they just thought like, let's do this. And it actually turned out positively, like a net positive, because like, I think that those new Jerome's Dream records, they actually decided to put out records. Yeah. That's cool. They did their reunions and they're like, we like doing this. Let's start putting out new music. And it's been very successful creatively for them. And like, I think those new Jerome's Dream records, while it's not music that I actively listen to, I'm well worn enough as a fucking idiot who's listened to this music for years to know if it's good or not. And I think that those records are good. And it's not just because I'm bros with them, because I would tell them that they just put out some garbage, but like they're trying, you know what I mean? And those records sound amazing and the songs are better and realistically are a better band than when we were kids.
Oh yeah.
And so like, it's cool.
I was always one who I thought that they got better as they went along.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Like, not to say that they were like some sort of joke when we were kids, but like, I didn't love them.
Yeah.
We just played with them a lot and I really loved them.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like Eric and Jeff, those guys are guys that I like, I still talk to, I still see, you know what I mean? That I think are like, but at least Eric anyways, who I like, he lives in San Francisco, but anytime he's in New York, I randomly run into him on the same fucking like corner always.
Oh, it's funny.
Like literally a week and a half ago, he was here with his girlfriend and I was like, we did this 6 years ago. You know what I mean? Like, and then before that, we did this 3 years ago. You know what I mean? Right. We always run into each other on the same fucking weird kind of like chaos point in Brooklyn. But anyways, yeah, reunions. Good, bad, I get whatever.
Yeah, who knows?
Corny.
Who cares?
It's just corny. You know what I mean? Like, and that's fine because like everybody does corny shit. So what the fuck are you gonna do? So
well, and even to get us into the next thing we're gonna go into, I mean, I had my students interact with a lot from the KLF over this semester. I used that group as a way to teach rhetorical strategies and stuff like that. And even within that, like what I always appreciated about them was like the anti-reunion kick, but it's like they're still doing shit, but it's like, no, like we're gonna make a pyramid and you can put your ashes in it. And
sure. But like at least their bit's consistent, right?
Oh yeah.
Like, and like I just think that like, I don't know, if you build your bit, your thing, your style, your whatever, your manifesto as like something that purposely has holes in it, that's the most incredible way to go. Because like I talk all this junk about reunions, but like within the next 2 years we're probably going to do a Reversal of Man reunion.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I'm going to be involved and I'm going to make jokes about how I talk so much shit about reunions and like you guys really missed you know what I mean? Like, so maybe not, but it's like not a conversation.
Right.
Combat, never. But you know what I mean? So it just whatever. I like that too, and I like hypocrisy as just another pencil, just another thing.
Mm-hmm.
Is, you know what I mean? Like talk a ton of shit and then do the opposite because it's fun, because people lose their minds, and you get so much satisfaction out of disappointing people and watching people who care too much about some of the stupidest shit in the world lose their fucking minds over it. It's awesome.
Oh yeah.
It's fun. So say the thing and then do the opposite. It's sometimes it's some of the best art that you can make, or not even tangible art, but dealing with the internet art, dealing with people art, which is like a whole another thing. It's like pranking people, punking people, hate sport, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
So even within that, I mean, you're already getting into the next topic, so I'm going to go in on this to set you free again. Just off the leash.
Just wind them up and let them go.
So even like you're speaking to this, but DIY culture often rejects traditional structures. There's definitely the irony of playing into that, but this is both in the art and in the communities it fosters. How does this ethos shape the rhetorical traps you set in your writing and art? How do you decide when to lean into or push against the expectations of those communities that you're a part of?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it's so much of a plan as much as a whim on any day I'm feeling aggravated about anything.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I think that it's really hard to it's funny that you bring up tradition, like, bunking tradition, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But like, I don't think that even really even plays anymore, because if you've heard a band in 2024, you've heard a band in 1981.
Yep.
You know what I mean? And so the tradition is all what punk and hardcore and metal is about.
Right.
But also, like, it could be argued that we've all hit, like, it's the lowest art in the lowest fencing, and the tightest fencing, rather. And so, like, you could leak here and there, and you can have your whatever, your weird versions of all this fucking garbage. You know what I mean? But I think that, like, you could just look to the late 70s in England, and you could already see things like Wire happening.
Yeah.
Who already knew that the whole thing was up, and let's start fucking around with this, like, angular, and that's the most exciting. That's what I remember. I don't remember any of those fucking bands from that era. You know what I mean? Other than, like, the first Discharge LP.
Yep.
But, like, I do remember fucking Pink Flag by Wire and all that kind of shit. You know what I mean? So I think that, like, there is something to be said that, like, punk and hardcore and metal is more of a safe zone for weirdos, rather than, like, and a great entry point to know that you belong in life, or whatever crutch that you need to be able to get past your fucking teens, and make it to, like, your 30s, is that that's the greatest asset of punk and hardcore and everything else, is that it's a open community for goofballs to find a place in life, because everybody wants to feel comfortable in some sort of way, whether it's their own skin or people they're talking to or feeling understood. A lot of the times that makes my eyes roll. It made my eyes roll as a kid, and it makes my eyes roll as an adult, but I understand the value in it.
Right.
Maybe more so now as an adult. And so I can't, when I see new generations of kids being like, oh, I'm weird, even with garbage like Chapel Roan. You know what I mean? You're like, yeah, I've seen Lady Gaga. Thanks, kid. Like, like all these new generations, I appreciate the fact that they are young and they think that they've inventing something weird that, like, if you just look at club culture from, like, the early 80s in New York City, you're like, oh, so that person also had full white makeup and a bald head and weird painting on their face, and you're not that exciting. Let's be honest, Chapel Roan just looks like Dee Snider. So, like, it doesn't really, like, necessarily, like, matter so much as far as, like, tradition and things like that goes. It's just that's what sparked me. That's, like, one of the things I drew from that, was that, like, I do want to speak on the fact that, like, punk is a really conservative, traditional, creative outlet.
Yeah.
And so is metal, and so is hardcore. And at this point in time, no one has anything new to offer. You can have a cooler recording, you can spend more money, you can make things sound more brutal, you can fucking pretend that you're from fucking Sweden even though you're from Arizona, like, you know what I mean, like, you know, who I love. I mean, I'm not going to say their name, but I love that band, you know what I
Yeah.
mean, because they're one of the greatest studies of like studying a genre and doing it correctly, like on the other end and kind of growing it a little bit. But like in general, it doesn't have anything to offer.
Right.
You know? And so going into your question, now I'm going to look at it, is that like my traps, how I set things up, it's more for my amusement and what I'm in the mood for at any point in time. It is so much less now than ever before, because I am kind of on autopilot. Maybe not with the writing so much, but definitely with the Stake Mountain art, as I obviously was saying in the first part of this, is that like I don't fuck around anymore. You know, like it is setting rhetorical traps or any traps for people, or I'm not super interested in aggravating people as much as I used to be. And some of that is that like there are also like whole stretches of time where I've not made any real art.
Right.
You know, years. I was, you know, there were years where I was doing more of these fucking things like podcasts and interviews than I did actual art in a year. You know, like, because like hearing the sound of my own voice is apparently what my best asset is, you know, as far as a creative person goes. So, and best is really just me thinking that. Just a professional podcast, you know, guest who can talk a ton of shit and make people laugh. You know what I mean? And like, I should have just been a, you know, like an auxiliary fucking like, you know, fucking late night show person, or, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Guess like, oh, Johnny's out this week, we got Chris, he's going to talk a ton of shit. But anyways, like, I don't really think about it that way anymore. I think with the writing, I do a little bit more, and I apply maybe what I've learned about what makes people aggravated, and also like purposely being austere or not weird, because anyone who's purposely being weird is idiotic to me. But some people who are being coy or taking pieces out to make things more interesting to them, or what they would think is kind of like maybe detrimental to a possible reader, or or just knowing, like in the case of like The Holy Day, like obviously I have two novels. Hunchback 88 is the first one that came out on Inside the Castle, and well, originally not so much, but that's what it's out on now. And then The Holy Day, which is on Rose Books. The difference between the two is, to me, great. A huge difference, a massive difference. And the Hunchback 88 was willfully fuck you.
Yeah.
You know, like I built it with no breaks. And it really had nothing to do with bunking tradition. It was just how I wanted to write it. You know, and it's how it came together as a collage piece, however you can see it, a stream of consciousness, a collage piece, a left turn, right turn, no breaks, whatever, you know what I mean? But The Holy Day I took far more seriously. And when Chelsea got involved with Rose Books, Chelsea's readership and her fan base, people who love Chelsea Hodson's writing, are so much different than anybody who I deal with. You know, the fucking Glenn Ritchies of the world, and you know what I mean, and like, you know, people who can kind of like get on my wavelength and are interested in what as far as my writing goes, you know, interested in what I'm doing. And I like purposely designed it not necessarily to fuck with her audience, but she came on and signed me to do the book because she knew she could fuck with her audience, which is essentially girls who wear navy blue, drink lattes, and listen to NPR and love books.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, you know, she's got a very, you know, there's all kinds of people who love Chelsea's writing, but, you know, she's got like a fucking girly squad on her fucking, you know, fucking reply guy fucking run, you know what I mean? That she has, you know what I mean? And so, but even when she came on and like wanted to do the book, I rewrote the book basically to be a little bit more friendly for her audience, but without losing anything that would maybe make it special, or even just like to the best of my capability, because I'm not a traditional writer, because I don't think like a traditional writer, because I respect people who can write a regular ass basic bitch fucking beach read, and I know I can't because I just don't have it in my bones. I don't know what a fucking, I've got terrible grammar. I don't know what a split participle is or whatever. Like, I don't know any of these things. Like, I just wing it. You know what I mean?
Hey, I'm telling I have a master's degree and I'm like, or I'm about to have a master's degree and I'm like right there with you. So it's.
But I believe because of that, like, I do believe that you probably could write something that made sense. You'd labor over it. You know what I mean? But like, I have to use Grammarly to write emails because I'm just a psychopath. And like, you know what I mean? I want to sound like a professional, you know? So I need AI assistance to make me not sound like I'm a fucking goofball when I'm trying to talk to somebody I'm trying to fucking, you know, deal with on a professional level that isn't familiar with the fuck you antics of Christopher Norris. You know what I mean? Like, you know, so like, I wish I could. It's kind of like music in general. You know, it's like, and I've said it a million times before, it's like one of my easy catchphrases or whatever phrases that I use, but it's like, I see a guitar and I see my car keys on it. You know what I mean? Like, I couldn't tell you what a chord is. Like, it took Dan Ratty for me to be in Reversal Man, who's the guy who I was in bands with forever, who can play, to teach me how to actually play, you know, and I still don't know how to. I mean, I haven't picked up a guitar in 20 years, but I mean, but at that time when I was doing it in the late or the early 2000s or whatever, and like kind of winding down my career being in bands, quote unquote career, you know what I mean? I just like it's just my natural instinct is to drive it like it has no brakes. But with the Holy Day, I tried so hard to rein it in, but without any interference from anybody else. Like, realistically, I thought maybe Chelsea could bring somebody in and just ghostwrite it for me and bring it to life and have it be normal, but she wasn't having any of that. So I did to the best of my ability to make it as normal as possible, quote unquote. But I'm interested in that. And I would like to think, like, if I keep writing books, by my 9th book, when I'm about to die, I'll finally crack the code on like a fucking Judy Collins novel or whatever.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, you know, or something like that. Cause that's the dream. Like, I wish I could pick up a guitar and fucking write pop music. But again, like, I pick up a guitar and I'm like, what's the worst noise I can make? You know, like, that's how I always thought when I was in bands. And that's how I always thought, that's obviously how I started writing like that. You know, I was definitely doing things where, hold on, somebody's trying to call me. Sorry, everybody. You are goodbye. I was definitely trying to, with the writing, you know, was just seeing if I could at first. And those all stemmed from, and I've said this a million times, probably in interviews, but it's like they stem from writing screenplays because I love movies. And realistically, what's so funny about that is that my brain can't tell the difference between, like, in a screenplay, I can actually write a normal screenplay. I can write really normal, but I can't shake the fact that it's like, this is a blueprint. So I'm writing a screenplay and I have to be organized and I have to, maybe my ideas aren't so in line, but I can write the basic idea of it that's clear. But once I start turning into a book, I'm just like, what the fuck, dude? I can't reconcile any of this shit. So I'm just going to put it all on the page and I'm going to edit for 8 months. You know what I mean? And even then it makes it worse. You know, the more I tool with that, the fucking dumber it becomes, or the more austere it becomes, or the more obtuse it becomes, or whatever. So anyways, I don't know if I answered your question on this one, but I guess like I think what you're asking me here is I don't think I think too deeply about any of this stuff. And it's always run on instinct. And even though like I don't think too deeply, I do understand the overarching thing of what I'm doing and if I'm fucking with people or things like that. And if no one gets aggravated by it, that's fine. And if people get aggravated, that's great too. But like, I guess I also am never looking for like the satisfaction of my work.
Right.
Like, you know, you can come at me and be like, and you know, over the years, like I've been very like, I appreciate when somebody says they like something, but it took me a long time to get to that point because I guess like I know the worth of the work a lot of the times, you know? So I'm like, so you liked that thing that It took me like a long time to reconcile the fact that like you can do something in 5 minutes and it be a fucking A+ job.
Oh yeah.
The amount of work that you put into something isn't necessarily mean it's worth.
Right.
You labored over something for years and it could just be a pile of shit. You know what I
Yep.
mean? Or you could take a piece of fucking Xerox paper and a Sharpie and do something stupid and Xerox it, and you kind of have a Mona Lisa.
Oh yeah.
And it took me a lot of years to really understand that aspect of it all. And if somebody's taking the time to tell you that they like something, you got to be at least polite about it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, you can't be a fucking asshole about it, you know? Or that's what I've always found, or I've found as I've gotten older anyways, So, yeah. Yeah. I think that's something close to. I'm going to be doing this a lot in this, being like, I think I answered your question, because like I said, you just pull the fucking cord and I just run. But like, but yeah, like ultimately, I do think that like I don't know if I think that deeply about it as much as like it's just a lot of the stuff I do, a lot of the movements I make as far as art making, writing, everything. It's just so normal to me. And there are moments where I'm like, oh, this is going to be annoying for people. But like, I also make that work less and less. I find as I get older, mostly because like anybody, you start as an angry young person, and then that anger just becomes normal, and you're not so angry anymore. And it's just how you operate. So like, to me, like I'm just like I'm making like home and gardens art at this point, even though it's aggressive art.
Yeah.
Like I'm just, because it's so normal here in the house. You know what I mean? For like my wife to walk over to the computer and be like, oh yeah, some guts. Okay, sure. You know what I mean? Like, it's like, who cares,
Right.
And that could go into a bigger picture of just the violence of the world. We could be talking about a bigger picture that I'm not smart enough to even access. That like everybody's depressed and no one gives a shit about anything, and everything's fucking aggressive, and everybody has too much information, and nothing fucking matters, and everything that was violent at one point in time isn't so violent anymore because who cares? You know what I mean? And like, so, which is like probably like why things like Hallmark movies are such a huge industry, because like people just want the ease of like 17 fucking Christmas movies made in 2023, like with Lacey Chabert in it or whatever from fucking Party of Five,
that is
because that's like bomb shit. You know what I mean? Like, and I think that to me is like kind of why a lot of that stuff is more popular than ever, is just as much as violent art is.
Right.
And dark superhero movies and whatever, and fucking comedians who are fucking edgelords, and you know what I mean, and everything else, So, yeah.
On the Hallmark thing, that really resonates with me, because as of the last like 2 or 3 years, the entire month of December, it is just me cycling through those.
They're amazing.
Oh yeah.
They are. I don't have the time to do it as much as I would like to, but I would love a Saturday of 8 of those things.
Oh yeah.
And I come out the other end and my fucking brain is leaking out of my ears. You know what I mean? Like, I wish I had the time. And it's so funny because a lot of that industry too, especially even if you start digging into like what they consider to be like edgy, which is like the Lifetime movies with like like A. Fox or whatever, or the Eric Roberts fucking Naughty Doctor movies or whatever.
Yep.
Is that like David Deco 2 or whatever, like the very famous like Fred Olen Ray sort of gay, sort of slasher film who's been around forever. He directs a lot of those for Lifetime.
Yep.
And that's hilarious to me too.
Oh yeah.
Like the fact that even fucking exists, So, but yeah, I wish November came and I didn't want to just watch White Christmas every day.
Yeah.
And I wish that, and I had days where I could just be like, all right, fucking Lacey Chabert or whatever, like, we're doing this. You know what I mean? Like, we're you and me and Christmas in Norway and Home for the Christmas Days or whatever crazy, weird millions of titles. But if you start looking, like, there's hundreds of them.
Oh, yeah.
It's like the fucking Western in Europe in the fucking 70s. You know what I mean? It's like, they're getting made everywhere. And they are impossibly stupid.
Oh,
and
yeah.
So poorly made. But like, what my mom watches? All that shit.
Yep.
You know, she's like, Christopher, what's fucking good? What should I be watching? And I'm like, oh, you might like this. I don't know. And she's like, fuck it. I'm going to watch these Hallmark movies. You know what I mean? And you're like, okay, that's fine too. I wish I could too, Mom, but I do. Movies are the last art I truly actually respect and pay attention to. So sometimes I can't also just do that.
So the TV, like when I sit down to watch a movie, I just want to only do that. And it started out just being like, well, I don't have enough time of the day to sit down and watch like the 3-hour whatever I want to watch.
Sure, the homework movie that you want to watch. Yeah.
Well, not even that.
Even though it's not homework, but yeah. But
still, okay, homework. I thought you said Hallmark, but yeah, homework.
No, homework movies, which are like people think is like a derogatory term, but I, you know what I mean? Like I don't mind sitting through a 3-hour Rivette movie. That's homework, but it's so good, enjoyable. Yeah, you know what I mean? It's always so enjoyable.
So then it's just become this weird thing where I'm like, I don't even have time to watch. Like I don't know, like I made a bunch of people recently sit down and watch a Jess Franco movie for the first time. And it's like, this is what I want to do in addition to like the homework stuff. But there's just this divide in my brain now that's like, nope, my off time from the semester is 4 movies.
Yes. Yeah. You're a son of a bitch for showing a bunch of people at Jess Franco. I know that. I'm a bastard, but I would never inflict that on anybody. Even the fun ones.
Yeah.
You know, even like the good time ones, like fucking, you know, Venus and Furs or something.
Yeah.
But you know, I agree. I just like what, like it, but like with TV, it's like, you know, occasionally I am interested. If you propose it as a 10-hour movie and it's actually made by a person who's made a fucking movie before and then the sole director on it, I may take a look at it.
Yeah.
Even just stupid shit like fucking the first season of like True Detective.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like that dude made movies and he made this. So he has a filmmaker sensibility rather than a person who's, you know, there to dispel a lot of information and do fucking bottle episodes that no one gives a fuck about because they have to like do their fucking 10 fucking series count, like, you know, episode count. And, you know, but then that all being said, there are, if you look to the 60s and 70s, that's like a different kind of vibe for TV.
100%.
And like, so you look at things like Kolchak, Night Stalker and anything like that. And like Dan Curtis with the Dark Shadows and, you know, and then his movies like Burn Offerings and stuff like that. Those are all really interesting things. It's a different vibe then because it's most of the time like pornography in the 70s. Most of the time it's just failed filmmakers who have to work in TV, who have filmmaker sensibilities.
100%.
You know, but they just didn't have the chutzpah to make it happen. You know, or the luck or whatever that it, because most of the time it's luck, you know, or rich parents, like whatever. So these days more rich parents, but you know, still a lot of luck involved in getting a feature made, you know?
Yeah.
Or at least your Rolodex is sick, you know?
I'm going to have to, there's a couple of things that I want to ask you off the record about that.
Sure.
But
okay.
To get us back on track.
Yes, let's go.
So the quick thing that I'll say is, and this is why I was really excited to talk to you for the interest of like my students primarily, because I'm teaching first year composition. A lot of these people hate writing until they get like a month into my class and it's like, oh, this guy doesn't grade our stuff that hard. He doesn't care about grammar and yada, yada, yada. Like, cool.
It's about getting it on the page. Yeah,
exactly. And so even within that, briefly, the thing that I want to bring up before we go into the next thing is an interesting thing that I recalled is you wrote your first novel on your iPhone in the Notes app, right?
Not in the Notes app, but on my phone in Google Docs.
Sweet. And I wanted to bring that up because it is that matter of I have students who's like, oh, well, I forgot my this, that, or the other. It's like, well, it doesn't matter, dude. Just get it there and you can edit whatever into what you need it to be. So
yeah, you don't need like the Scrivener, everything, Google Docs, your computer. Like you don't need any of that because everything is the same thing. It's just bigger or smaller.
Yep.
And so like a lot of like Hunchback 88 was in final draft because it was script. And then I moved it to a Google Doc and then I sat on this fucking couch here and my wife played fucking Call of Duty. You know what I mean? And I would open the fucking Google Doc and fucking let it spin, land in a place, read a bit, and be like, oh, I'm going to change that.
Yep.
Oh, I have a cool part here. Ooh. Now, of course, like, of course, there were moments where I was like sitting at a job or something at a laptop, and I was like, I'm going to fuck around and, but like even the Holy Day, a lot of that was written on the phone during the pandemic, sitting here, while my wife played Fortnite. You know what I mean? Because she had moved to Fortnite by that point in time. Because Fortnite was like her way to communicate with her family, because her sisters are all gamers. Like they all play video games.
Cool. Yeah.
So they would all get on Fortnite, in like fucking, July 2020 or whatever. And, and we'd just all be able to talk to each other and then be like, bitch, watch out. You know what I mean? Like, get in the fucking car, get in the fucking car. You know what I mean? Like, what is happening here, dude? But you know what I mean? So yeah, I did. It's like, you don't need any of that. And like, this is like really where the DIY thing, I guess, really comes into play.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Is that like, you don't need anything but a piece of paper and a pencil.
Right.
You know what I mean? Or if you've got the world's greatest fucking memory, you're a fucking Rain Man, then you can just write the whole thing in your head. And then once you get to a computer, you can fucking do that. But we don't know very many people that good.
No.
But like you can do, it's just, you don't need any of that shit. You know what I mean? Like, I think that it makes kids trying to come into their own, feel more professional and they're doing it.
Yeah.
Because being prepared and having the correct tools can mentally make you feel like you're at least 30% won the battle.
Well, yeah, and that was my experience, because I was big on Adobe when I started doing my thing. And I mean, I just got rid of all of that within the last couple of years. And it's using programs like I'm using GIMP right now, to where it's just like, oh, I got to relearn this. And there's new things I'm learning about what I'm doing from that challenge. Yeah.
Kids, just do it. Literally, that's all it is. Like literally the stupidest thing in the world and the most basic fucking directive, but just like, shut the fuck up and do it. Like, it doesn't matter what you do it on.
Oh yeah.
You know what I mean? And also, like, doesn't matter what you write. Like just start writing. If you have spent the money to take a writing class in college, you have an interest in writing, even if you don't want to.
Yep.
And like anything in life, everything gets easier after you take the first step. It's so easy. Like, it sucks. And everybody's got anxiety now, and everybody's got fucking ADHD, and we all do. There's not a person who's fucking well adjusted. Nobody's calibrated. You know what I mean? So sometimes, like, what I always tell people is that, like, when you want to make something, you just got to make something. Doesn't matter if it's good. Doesn't matter if it's bad. Just if you have an interest, an internal interest that you feel like you need to create, do it. I don't have that. I'm a dick, and I'm fucking. And listen, be honest. Like, I'm not gonna lie. It's arrogant to say, but I'm fucking talented.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, I am, and I take that for granted a lot of the times by saying things like, "Oh, I'm on autopilot," but I still get tons of work. You know what I mean? And this is my D game, but people think it's my A game. That's arrogant. That's actually asshole shit to say. It's cocky as fuck. But like in general, for people, like I know, like a lot of kids and a lot of adults and everything have this need to create. Dude, if I was a millionaire tomorrow, I'd never make a goddamn thing again in my life, dude. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I promise. Like, that's not hyperbole. That's not Chris Norris bit. I don't like doing this shit.
Yeah.
Like, so I would never do anything again if I never had to do anything again. Spend my life watching fucking all the movies that are stacked next to this fucking TV, and then while buying more, like. But I love art. I love other people's art.
Yeah.
I have a vested interest in writing and art and dance and theater and film and everything. I love it all. Maybe not music, but everything else I have a true interest in. And I'm excited to see, you know what I mean? So with young people, it's just like, you just got to do the thing. Who fucking cares if it's fucking bad?
Yeah.
You can't get good unless you've done bad shit. Failure.
Well, yeah,
you know what I mean? Like the failure thing, so
that's a lot of what I've emphasized, and even to that point of like, you're talking about like the D work versus the A work. And I mean, I've had that conversation where it's, look, like all of you have good ideas because, not to sound hippy dippy on it or anything like that, but they're your ideas. They are of you, so they stand to be interesting. And if you meet the basic criteria of something, you've done more work than most people have. So it's in that
absolutely.
case, it's easy to see where the D work and the A work, those boundaries blur. And I appreciate you speaking to that, especially with the, let's say the fuck it Nike mentality of it, the fuck it, just do it.
Just do it, dude. Yeah.
Thinking about things like identity and power in composition. I mean, we all know DIY culture is often tied to ideas of resistance and subversion. Now, the amount of mileage you get from that tends to vary, and even considering things like identity and power. In your work, how have you seen communities, specifically DIY communities, responding to your critiques of identity or social power dynamics, if at all? And I say this, one, because we recognize the work in combat and a lot of the Stake Mountain work to have been overtly antagonistic. And at the same time, working with Against Me through a huge transitional period for now Laura Jane Grace's work. I mean, you've kind of been on the cutting edge of a lot of this for going on 30 years now. So
yeah, almost 30 years. Yeah.
And I don't think I've ever really heard anybody probe around about that.
Because none of you are paying attention, and I'm not paying attention. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah.
And I think that like the early combat stuff, combat wounded veteran stuff, and how antagonistic that was because we wanted to, and me specifically, and Paunch, and definitely because we grew up together, Dan Shook, who I started the band with, were like, and I'm going to use a term that maybe nobody's going to like, but we were like faggy art kids who liked Slayer. You know what I mean? Like we were, you know what I mean? And we were like kind of, even though we were like little Largo, Florida, like fucking white trash brats, like we were definitely two sensitive kids who were like not ready to fight, but ready to talk shit,
Yeah.
And so with combat, like we fucking loved Slap-a-Ham Records and Man is the Bastard and all the black and white charred baby fucking art that you could give us. We would eat it up. But for me, I looked at all that stuff and it didn't resonate artistically to me. Even though I started out as a photocopy artist, it was my tool to create things that were a little different than what everybody was seeing. Part of that was seeing what McFeeters and Neil Burke was doing with Men's Recovery Project. Massive influence. But also, even just down to dumb shit like Rob Zombie's art from the White Zombies Los Exorcisto. Massive impact on me. Gary Panter, who I always bring up. Who's like the greatest, the only true punk artist that's ever really existed.
Yeah.
Like everybody works in punk, but he is an actual punk artist.
Yes.
The punk artist. You know what I mean? He was there at the fucking ground floor in LA, Screamer's logo, crazy fucking Jimbo art, all that shit. He's the truest. Most people make art. Here's what I always say. Most people make art at a 5 foot distance. You know what I mean? You're here, the art's 5 feet from you.
Yep.
Very rarely do you see an artist who is 6 inches from the fucking art. That it's so pure to their personality, so true and exciting to see, which should not scare any kid from making art.
Right.
But just know the chances are you're not that person. Right. Most people aren't. It is a rare occurrence. So there's somebody like Gary Panter, you see that. That is just cut open the brain. It's on the paper. That's what it is. There's no thinking about it. It is just riffing and psychoticness and a beautiful line, and then it's just like, whatever. He used to say that he would just drink like a case of fucking cola and just draw.
Yep.
And he was just jacked on like early fucking 80s Coca-Cola, when it still had insane sugar and was like not good for you.
Yeah.
As opposed to the garbage that's just not good for you like it is now. Right. It was really bad for you and your teeth and everything. And so like you just like when we started combat, like, and it was happening as a zeitgeist, I think, all over like the next generation of like hardcore and punk bands, like where there was this wave of your capitalist casualties and your no comments and anything that kind of happened before it, even any of the disbands or anything. And we were just like, nah, dude, like, we're going to do Mutants and fucking fluorescent art. And that was happening here. And the Locusts were doing that. And then fucking lightning bolt. Like none of us knew each other. It was just happening in the moment. And obviously like a little bit of like the forefathers of it are Sam McPheeters and Neil Burke. But like, you know, it's like whatever Godard or Picasso or whoever you can attribute that quote to, it's like not where you take it from, it's where you take it to.
Yep.
You know? And so every piece of influence, you know, you absorb and you hone it until it is your style. You know, that is how style is created. You steal from everybody until you have something that works for you.
Oh yeah.
That's how it is, you know? And some people have a bunch of cards in their deck and can do all kinds of things. And some people Xerox skulls, like whatever, like it doesn't matter.
Right.
But like early on, that was like our antagonistic move was that, you know, it wasn't so much so, it was more ambient antagonism because we wanted to be so different aesthetically, even though like literally what we were writing was just us trying to figure out an Infest song and we just couldn't. And that's that's what happened with Combat. You know, we were just like, we don't know how to do any of this basic shit, the building blocks of a grindcore song. We can't figure it out, but here's what it sounds like to us. And that's what the band turned into, you know? So, but like somewhere in there, like I got it in my head early on where I was like, well, I want to.
So we're back. And no sponsors, but we're back.
We're back. We were talking about how my antagonism and not being able to do things, like one of the greatest things in the world, one of the best freedoms you have, especially as a young person making art, is not knowing what the fuck you're doing.
Right.
The best art you're ever going to produce is when you don't know what you're doing. And once you figure it out, you might be good. You might be great. But you'll never have that fire of not knowing.
Right.
And to a certain degree, my age group, and maybe a little your age group, but definitely not this age group that we're talking to, is that like everybody knows everything. You know, like everybody has access to everything in a way that is exciting, but is not necessarily helpful in growing a personal style or whatever. You have to, and to a certain degree, like it's not easier for these kids. They have to try harder.
Right.
You know, because there's too much.
Yep.
Like I appreciate that teenagers know how to dress now, you know, like that's cool to me that like kids have style that actually like looks good and not just like doofus looking, thinking you look good, you know?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
You know, and like a fedora and a fucking thrift store jacket with the fucking, you know, corduroy on the fuck, you know what I mean? Like whatever, like, but the fact that like kids have to try harder to find themselves now is really, it's actually so scary. But they also just like when I was a kid, you just kind of bumbled around until you kind of figured it out. And a lot of the times you were lucky to fall into places that, you know, now every kid in the world, whatever niche, strange, weird thing that they love, that they kind of stay stuck in, comes from like just like finding ease of use of finding your place. It's actually easier than ever to find your place in the world.
Yeah.
Now. I would assume as a young kid, maybe none of these kids are all shaking their heads like, I'm so lost, I don't have any friends, whatever. But realistically speaking, the option is there. When I was a kid, you were lucky, you know, like I was born and raised in Salem, Massachusetts, and my parents moved us to Tampa, Florida at 13. If I would have stayed in Massachusetts, if my parents did not want to leave fucking Salem, like, I don't know which way I would have gone. I don't know where I would have fell in. I had a vested interest in fucking speed metal and glam rock and fucking all kinds of things. But like, I don't know if I would have found hardcore. I don't know if I would have found punk. I could have just, you know, I could be fucking married with fucking 6 kids and being like, oh, I love Kiss records and forgetting all about my youth, you know? So the fact that like you were just like, a lot of times you were lucky, like, to fall into things, and then you're just like, wow, these are my people, or this is where I feel comfortable, or whatever. It's like Ponch and I met like on the first day of like 8th grade in a graphic arts class, and we've been friends ever since, because his like fucking like social studies folder or whatever had like Ice Cube and Slayer on it, and like Suicidal, and I was like, that kid, this fucking nerd, you know? And like we became friends, and we've been friends ever since, you know what I mean? And we gathered a couple people that were in that same era with us along the way, that we all, if I don't talk to them, I still keep up with them, at least on social media.
Yeah.
But kids are so lucky now to be able to access anything that they want. If they find something that they like, they can find somebody who will like them inside of it very easily.
Yeah.
But I just like found death metal because it was on the Creative Loafing in Tampa, which is like the Village Voice of Tampa. Like I saw
Right.
Deicide, and I was like, oh, I've been looking for more. If I would never have seen that, I don't even know if I would have got into death metal, even though I was well into fast music at that point in time and thrash and stuff like that. I would have gotten there, but just like you find these things and then you kind of build into it, you know,
Oh,
even with
yeah.
horror movies, you know, or movies in general and that interest, you know. But anyways, that's a tangent. But shit, what was your question though?
No, I mean,
What did I miss here? You know?
you didn't miss much of anything,
Yeah,
really.
okay.
And
Oh,
what's
okay,
up?
I know where I was going with all this.
Yeah, what's up?
Is that we were talking about the antagonistic artwork, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, blah, blah, blah. But there was a point in time with combat and everything like that where I thought I was going to be able to do that professionally. Like how I saw Gary Panther, or even on some sort of level, like if you look past something like Jackass, but you look at Spike Jonze. Spike
Right.
Jonze is one of the greatest artists of this past couple of decades because he's just a fucking goofball who made it work.
Yep.
And whether you like his movies or not, he is one of the most interesting filmmakers working in at least the studio system.
Mm-hmm.
I can always appreciate anybody who fucking smuggles in weirdness or offness, even if you don't like it. Like, I don't want to ever watch Her again in my fucking life. You know what I mean? Or really any of Spike's movies. But I respect the artist because
Right.
he was able to smuggle in something you don't see that we see, that at any point in any year you look back and you think about your mindset, you keep on thinking it can't get any worse than this.
Yeah.
As far as like creative output in Hollywood goes. And then every year they prove you fucking wrong, you know, like, because it can't. Like it can. So somebody like Spike is a really interesting guy. And I always loved Spike. I look to him as at least just an inspiration on what you can do as a scrappy idiot.
Yeah.
You know, whether you backdoor into making music videos that backdoors into making movies with no fucking business doing either of them.
Oh, yeah.
But just because you have a drive and creative ideas. That's interesting to me. So I thought I was going to be able to do that. And that's part of why Against Me was such a big part of my life, and why I pushed so hard in the mid 2000s to make it work. And then I realized I just didn't like making art. You know what I mean? And found a way to do the easiest version of it to make it be all right. And you do see a massive decline in how aggressive I am.
Mm-hmm.
Like as far as the quality of the art goes and like what I'm presenting. It's not that I'm dumbing it down. It's not that I'm being more commercial. It's just that more so than ever in that 2006 to, realistically speaking, recently, when I've had to make art again because I didn't have a job, is that like you just see like I you know, some years where I don't do anything.
Yeah.
And it's just the work is just aesthetically might be nice, and I know where things go, and I do care about design and everything, but there's nothing antagonistic about the art I've made since fucking probably like 2006. Not even the books, really. You know what I mean? Like, because like what's great about visual art is that it's immediately antagonistic.
Right.
A book, you can make somebody mad that they got fucking 30 pages in and they don't know what the fuck's going on. The thing about book readers that's interesting is that most book readers who pride themselves on being a book reader, like, I love books, will make it through the most turgid, ridiculous, confusing thing because they feel like it's their duty. I don't understand the chemistry of it, but I know that that's a thing. You know, like, I don't know what the fuck's like. There's so many reviews of Hunchback 88 or even The Holy Day where like, I didn't know what the fuck was going on, but I made it to the end. You know, did I like it? I don't know, you know, but yeah, you do see like I become less and less antagonistic. And part of that is probably what I was saying before, where you're angry until angry is just like an apple pie.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, because I'm not truly angry about anything. But anyways, yes. So
yeah, no. So I mean, the thing even that I was speaking to rather, as far as that whole matter of like antagonisms and everything like that. I mean, as somebody who's looked over your career, you know, I definitely had to become an adult before I could look at a lot of it. Because I mean, you've been doing work for as long as I've been alive, but
this is true. I guess That's the hardest. When you get older, that's going to be the hardest part about reconciling the fact that you're a 47-year-old person who still acts like a kid. Is that you talk to people who are 30 and you're like, fuck, I've been doing this as long as you've been alive. Yeah.
I mean, and even like analyzing your career trajectory and things like antagonisms and everything. I think that
Sure.
the ebbs and flows are there. And I would kindly say that rather than giving up, there's just a point of mastery where you know what you're doing and you can make a paycheck and all of that. So just,
Sure. I mean, yeah, I'll take that compliment. Yeah.
yeah, I'm not trying to get
What am I mastering though? Is the problem. But but still.
Well, I mean, it's I've even told my students this a couple of times. Like, well, I'm a master of the fine art of bullshit.
Yes.
So it's just
and that's something I'll take.
Yeah.
Like A+, just professor level on that shit for sure. You know what I mean? Like, and that is like, I've always kind of said this, and I stand by it continuously, is that the most consistent thing about my career making art is that like this part of Stake Mountain is the only part I'm interested in. It's talking about dumb shit. Like I like just to bullshit with people.
Yeah.
And a lot of the times it ends up because I'm bullshitting about myself, which is obviously self-serving and self-centered. But like, and I think that like I have great opinions about things or something apparently. But I think that like that the bit is the art. It's not the art, the actual physical art.
Yeah.
Stake Mountain, the bit, the shit talking, the getting into character or whatever, like that stuff I actually do enjoy. I probably should have been on fucking stage or something. Like I should have been an actor. But like I also don't have the patience for that craft. So, or the memory. Oh God, how do people remember lines, dude? And emote at the same time? It just blows my fucking mind, dude. But I mean, to me, like the Stake Mountain art is the bit. It's the most enjoyable thing to me. And it's not just about talking to myself. I just like, you know what I mean? Like what I loved about Combat and what I loved about Stake Mountain, when Stake Mountain was more of an anonymous thing before, I was like, actually, I want a little attention for being me, which happens definitely like around 2005, 2006, when I was like, yeah, no, Stake Mountain isn't a bunch of people. It's one person and it's me. And good luck trying to get a hold of me still, but fuck you. Is like, is getting a license to abuse people is really exciting. And like, let them, like, that's what, like, it's in the wrong hands. That aspect of hardcore and punk, like, can be bad.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, and violent people, because it's such a base, stupid thing, violent people will take that and, and that's why something so stupid like fucking slam dancing or moshing exists. You know what I mean? Like, and so it's just so idiotic. But like, I loved Combat and I loved Stake early on because I could take a microphone and hit a kid.
Right.
I could kick a fool and they'd be like, oh, that was so awesome. I got kicked. You're like, you're an idiot. Why would you want to get kicked? But like, I used to love that about it. And I still love that. But I'm obviously, like we've talked about, it's like I'm far less antagonistic because it's not fun anymore. And also it has a ceiling.
One funny thing that happened to me. So I had a similar experience. I found out about Infest when I was like 17, and that was it. Sure. It was, okay, we're doing this. And
of course, yeah.
So, and before I even knew who Combat Wounded Veteran was, the MO was, okay, cool, I can go and like run around, jump on people and hit them and yada yada. Cool.
And this is fun, and people love it.
Yeah. For sure. And I went to a different high school, so I didn't have to deal with the repercussions in any way, shape, or form. Sure. But fuck, where was I going? Oh, so a really funny thing was when you're talking about the ceiling and everything like that, was back when I was still like booking shows in my early 20s. I hosted this band from New Jersey, and I've always been like, all right, show up 10-20 minutes early, get shit going. Said like, the formulisms of how I can operate definitely are responsible for me getting into academia or whatever. But so I'm sitting there like greeting the band and she's like, hey, how's it going? How's the drive? And we're sitting there, he goes, he's like, and I'm not going to try to do a New Jersey, what they call an accent, but
sure.
But he was like, like, I just know you were like a crazy motherfucker back in the day and da da da. And I was like, well, shit, man, is that because I'm from Florida or what? Like,
Mhm.
you know, I was like, I don't know, I got old. Like, all of a sudden, it's no longer fun to get kicked in the head. And
No, it's
it's,
not.
yeah.
Yeah. No, no, no. It's I hated it. I hated it when I was figuring it out. I was like, people like to do this. But once I was in a power position,
Yep.
holding a guitar or a microphone, I was like, oh, I'm going to kick all these fools because this is fucking hilarious to me, which is bad. It's abusive and mean. But also, like, it was so much fun because, like, I had no respect for other hardcore punk kids at that time. You know, even like when we were at the height of combat, like we were like all thought we were better than anyone who was sitting at a show. We felt like we were even bands we were friends with. Like, are you trying to tell me that I'm not better than fucking Todd from His Hero's Gone? Dude, that guy lives with 17 fucking people in a squat and he smells like shit. Of course I'm fucking better than him. Am I a better musician? Am I a genius like Todd? No.
Yeah.
Todd is one of the greatest like punk composers, like let's be honest,
Yeah.
like of all time.
Me
Like
and my
no, go ahead. Yeah.
me and my buddy were just talking about this like last week.
Yeah. He is 6 inches from the art. You know, like that, those corny, reconstructed fucking amoebics and discharge riffs are him,
Mm-hmm.
you know? And like His Hero's Gone, 15 Counts Arson, or whatever the fucking name is of that record, that is a perfect record, and there are no perfect records from that era.
Yep.
You know what I mean? There are leaks in everybody's fucking record. You could love up fucking Reversal and Locust or fucking any of those bands all day long, but everybody's got fucking 5 terrible songs. It's hard to tell because all that shit does sound the same. But fucking His Hero's Gone actually had hits.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? They basically fucking Timbaland. You know what I mean? Like they were like, it's perfect music for what it is.
Yeah.
You know? And so like, no, as an artist, as a whatever, no, I'm not better than Todd. But I don't smell. And my white shirt isn't fucking a weird color that's not white. You know what I mean? So that's how we really approached a lot of that shit, especially on that Combat Reversal tour in 99, where we would play to these seas of smelly kids. And I would be like, in the back, Davey's working the fucking shirt counter. He will cut the sleeves off of your shirt. And also we have soap for sale. You know what I mean? Like, go
Right.
fuck yourselves. You know what I mean? He'll step on your shirt for you, get it started.
Yeah.
You know? Like, so you need the picture cut out so you can put it on your butt flap. Davey will take care of it. You know, like we were just abused these fucking idiots because we thought we were better than them. And most of the times we were, whatever. But yeah, you know, so that was like what it was like we had no respect for people who were giving us their time. And looking back on it, that's asshole behavior, but also I kind of love it. You know, like I kind of love that I made it out the other end of that. And starting Stake Mountain, it was the same kind of thing. You know, it was like taking it past whatever. It's like, do you think that I like Against Me's fans? You know, like, no, I don't. Like, if you actually like Against Me, I think you've got fucking problems. But like, or back then I did. Now it's maybe a little bit different because it means something different to people.
Sure.
And it actually has a purpose.
Yeah.
You know, like Laura is a beacon.
Yes.
And is really is like you know, an insanely brave artist. It shouldn't be about bravery or courage, but like that's what that kind of step was when she announced her transition. You know what I mean? Like that's big swing. And it's exciting. It's been exciting in this past decade plus to not necessarily work beside her so much as just her being like exactly like, to me, like at this point in time, like Laura's producing, while I still don't really love the music, Laura's producing the best work of her career.
Yeah.
You know, like, and again, it's like she's getting closer to being 6 inches from the fucking art. You know, do I like it? No, but I respect. I've very much so more in the past decade or so respect it more. You know, but at that time, like Against Me was, it's like Laura and I saw eye to eye on art. You know, and it made sense that we would work together, you know, because we liked the same art and we liked the same purpose of something like Aesthetic Legacy and understanding that an artist, you know, a visual artist can help a band create an identity or a whole record cycle. And then that's a neat thing.
Well,
You
it's
know,
like all that thing with like who is it, Crass and is it D
G
Voucher? G Voucher,
G,
yeah.
G voucher, yeah, or G or whatever. But I've always called her G voucher.
Sure.
So yeah, I mean, like that's always been my touchstone for that kind of thing. Like she's just a, whatever, the 13th member of the band who had 12 people that didn't need to be in the band, like, so, and she's realistically speaking, like maybe now the most important member of that band,
Oh yeah.
because who the fuck even listen? I mean, whatever. Christ the Album is a great record. Shaved Women's a great song. Does anyone actually listen to Crass? No. So like, I don't remember a Crass song to save my life truly, but I remember all of G's work because that's what you see. Like I said, visual is what you absorb the most.
Oh yeah.
And it's a very important part of people's legacies. And so like early on, Laura and I had that conversation. It was a prank that I started working for them from Edvar from No Idea, who knew I didn't like Against Me, actively talk shit about Against Me. and when they signed to Fat, they had 2 7-inches left to do, and it was just like Var at No Idea thought it would be funny, and then it backfired because I created one of the most coolest things I've ever done for a band, which is the gingerbread men fighting, and you unravel it and it's exploding. That's like a hilarious record, like just as far as just the design goes.
Yeah, I was gonna say I'm not a fan of Against Me in the slightest, but
No, yeah,
that record cover always caught me when I walked into a record store.
It's really a very cool record. I'm not going to lie. And I've done a lot of cool records for them. But that one and the cover of Transgender Dysphoria Blues are, like, to me, iconic records that I've done.
Yeah.
That like are great looking records that I've done. Past my aloofness, past my blaseness about any of the fucking art that I make. Those are fucking cool ass looking records. And so, like, and then Laura and I just got along. It was just like, oh, we're speaking the same language. And, fucking, whatever. Like, even though I don't love the band, I like a record. I like the White Crosses record. I think that's a good pop rock record.
Sure.
It's a well-produced, loud rock record. It's not a punk record. It's exactly what they should have been, the trajectory that they were on, that that Sire also thought that they were going to be able to hit, which has become a huge rock band rather than a band that can tour for the rest of their lives playing 2,000 to 4,000 like people, like cap venues, which is what they could do forever for their whole entire career. They could be Social Distortion, like, and that's fine. That's a great career. You know what I mean? Like, that's like, you play Janice Landing once a year. That's great. You play whatever in fucking Orlando. That's great. That's like of that size. Like, that's a cool job. That's a totally fine job.
Yeah.
But like, as a band, like a live band, they are an incredible band. They were always an incredible band. I would see, when I did go to their shows early on, when we were becoming friends and I felt like I needed to like network and play the game a little bit, I would just like see these performances that I thought were fucking incredible.
Yeah.
Playing music that I did not like, but like, just the crowd, like every terrible, corny thing that like Cameron Crowe says in every movie about the power of music that I roll my fucking eyes at is so real at Against Me show. Like, you can just feel it all the way to the back, and it's nuts to me.
I think I got dragged to see them by somebody I was like dating in my late teens, and I think it would have been to one of those White Cross like big shows at like an arena, and I remember seeing them. It was like, oh yeah, this is phenomenal. Am I going to go home and like party with it? No, but like, I'm glad I got to see this. Yeah,
they were just and that's the thing, is like very few bands can project like that.
Yeah,
in a giant, in a bigger than 4,000 cap place, and that's one of the great chemistries, and has a lot to do with Laura, because even now as a solo artist with like a revolving backup band, doing a couple Against Me hits and then all these new original songs like that she's written over the past like 8 years or so, 6 years, like it still translates. It's her. She's a great performer. It's awesome.
Yeah.
Again, and I think that right now the music that she's making, like I've heard the new LP that she recorded in Greece because I'm supposed to be working on it. Like, I was like, this is the best thing she's ever done. Like, nice. I think that this music is very interesting because she's taking very like simple. She's now a student.
Mhm.
She's mastered the art of the 3-chord song.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So she's pulled these very interesting, like very almost generic ways of writing music like this and just really doing a great job with it. Is it new? No. But there's an added element in there. And then I think this is what people keep coming back to the well with punk, hardcore, metal, whatever. Is like I said, it has a roof. It's fenced in. There's nothing you can do that makes it interesting because somebody's already done it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like immediately, like I said, Wire is a great example. They were like, okay, punk's cool, but watch this.
Yep.
We're going to deconstruct punk. Okay, good luck, everybody, for the next 50 years who trying to figuring it out.
Oh,
you know what I mean? Like, we've already done this. And there's only so many ways you can deconstruct that.
Right.
You know, before it's just unlistenable. And like, let's be honest, most people who are into punk or hardcore aren't really looking for unlistenable.
No.
They still want something to like make them motivated, make them feel, make them excited about the music.
Yeah.
And so like, you can't just turn it into noise. Like, realistically speaking, noise is the less vanguard. And that's idiotic to me because also there's no new ground there. It's just the most aggressive music.
Yeah.
That like won't ever be very popular.
Right.
You know, it's internet popular.
Yeah.
Everybody knows Merzbow. Everybody knows Masana. You know what I mean? Prurient. Fucking, you know what I mean? Like, everybody knows that shit. And then if you're some sort of self-respecting fucking aggressive music fan, you have a record, probably an MP3 of it somewhere in your fucking iTunes folder.
Oh yeah.
You know, or your Spotify playlist. You know,
Yeah.
even if like you're like, oh, I'm going to try this out. You've listened to it, but it's never going to be popular.
No. I mean,
You know what I
even
mean?
on the opposite end of that spectrum, like maybe not quite like a Merzbow or Masana, but even when you look at like William Begzinski and
Sure.
Glenn Branca, it's like, well, this is from a completely different school of thought. It's similar, but still no commercial appeal. And I had that
No commercial appeal.
Yeah, and I had that realization when I was a younger person who people in like my family network were always like, why are you like this death metal? Or da 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 da, and then trying to go like, oh, like I like softer music now. You should like listen to this, like fucking Godspeed or Mogwai, and then still just no, fuck you, kid.
Yeah, fuck you, kid. This is just more of the same. It's just quieter.
Yeah. So
in attitude, in representation, you know what I mean, and stuff like that. It's like the only way you can catch somebody older who's wondering about your musical taste is those soft hardcore kids who are like, no, I like the Smiths. You know, I like Elliott Smith. You know what I mean? Like, you know, things like that, which are all great records. Those records are great. You know what I mean? But like every hardcore kid is like, I'm sensitive is like, oh, I like Morrissey, you know, you know, or like I you know, I listened to, you know, fucking late 90s emo. You know what I mean? Well, that's how it was when I was a kid.
I mean, it's still it's still that way. I never caught it. I mean, I respect what's his name who plays for the Smiths, great guitar player, but
amazing. Yeah.
But it's just not my thing.
No. Yeah, I mean, I hear it and I hear the Smiths and I go, yeah, it's cool, man. It's like most music like that. I always use this example. It's like the poorest example I can use, but it is also like the most widely understanding of like a White Stripes record. I hear a White Stripes record and I go, dude, Jack White. Tones on this thing are incredible. Songs are really interesting. It's definitely like a guy who really is 6 inches from the art.
Yeah.
Maybe even 1 inch from the art.
Yep.
I hear a White Stripes record or a Jack White record, which I would never purposely listen to, you know, in the past couple of years. Right. But when I thought to myself, sick. Okay, anyways.
Yep.
I'm going somewhere else. I'm going to go do something else. You know what I mean? Like, but like, it's just like, I hear that in things like, you know, the Smiths or things like that, or the Sundays or anything or any Britpop that people were really excited about when I was young. You know, the concessions that people made for Blur or Oasis in the late 90s, if you were like a little hardcore kid and you're like, but I like Oasis. You know, I hear it now. And we've talked about this. It's like, you know, like over TM or whatever, it's like you're like a late adopter, you know what I mean, of Oasis. And like I recently actually truly listened to Oasis, like really listened to Oasis for the first time like last year. And I was like, oh yeah, okay.
Yep.
Sure. This is pretty sick, actually. I get it.
Yep.
And I understand it. Am I gonna put on fucking Morning Glory ever again in my life? Probably not. But the artistry is there, and there's actually some really aggressive music on some of those records that's like really crazy.
That's what I was talking to I was talking to my dad about this because my dad, it's funny because my dad likes like sludge metal, doom metal, and all that.
Sweet.
But
Yeah,
and got me into like the Melvins when I was a kid.
yeah,
So
yeah, yeah.
he's always just like maintained that line where he's more into like desert stoner rock and stuff at this point. Like
Sure.
fucking
Queen, all that kind of shit.
yeah. But and I pretty famously just don't go to shows very much
Yeah,
anymore.
it's
It's
terrible. Live
yeah,
music is awful. Yeah,
bad experience all
miserable.
around. But
Mhm.
I told him, he was like, "Oh, what have you been up to?" I was like, "Yeah, I was up until 5 a.m. trying to get Oasis tickets for Ireland." And so it was just one of those things to where like it's more of an excuse to go to Ireland, if anything.
Sure.
But
And
that's
it's one of those things like if you had to go see Oasis, why wouldn't you want to go over there? Why do you want to go to Foxborough over here in New Jersey to see them? That's you like
so
want it to be themed out, like appropriate.
yeah,
You know what I mean?
yeah.
Like I would never go to a fucking rave in my life in any fucking place in the United States. But when I was in Berlin, like visiting Berlin and fucking 2007 when I thought I was going to move there or whatever. Like I was like, dude, rave, let's go to the rave, bro.
Yeah.
That sounds great. Like, when in
100%.
Rome,
100%.
you know what I mean? So like, yeah, I would fucking stay up till 5 a.m. if I knew we were going to go to fucking England to see Oasis. That makes sense to me.
Right.
You
And
know?
even then,
You know?
he goes, "Wait, who's Oasis?" And I
I
was
love
like,
that.
yeah. And then I was like, "Oh, you know the band that does that song Wonderwall?" And he's like, "Why the fuck do you want to go see them?" And I was
Yeah.
like, "Well," and I can't explain the whole thing of like, well, like I'm a fan of Liam Gallagher as a shit poster first, and then
Yeah.
I
I
just
mean, world class.
yeah.
World class
accidentally
shit poster. Yeah.
got into the music. But then it was, and I was even talking to him, it was like, no, there's like some of those songs are way fucking heavier than a lot of the like more aggressive music I've ever listened to. It's
Yeah, they really are. That's what I was hearing. I was like, "Whoa, dude, this is actually like a crazy record. Like this recording is insane."
yeah.
And also way more aggressive than their peers.
Yes.
Like I love like I even things like I hear pulp now and I think like, yeah, I like this.
Yeah.
Actually, I think this is dope. But like it's still just corny fucking pop music that I'm just like not super interested in. And I love Cocker's whole thing.
Yeah.
He's got great tasting glasses and shit, and he dresses in a way that I could never dress, but I appreciate. You know what I mean? Like that Wes Anderson world of dressing.
Yeah.
Where you're like, what? Okay, it works for you, fucking string bean. But yeah, but I was hearing this Oasis thing. I was like, damn, dude, this is actually kind of angry music.
Yeah.
And then you think about the source, and you're like, this is two angry guys. They
Yeah.
are very angry people.
Oh,
you know what I mean? With egos, like insane egos.
yeah.
And proof is in the pudding, though. Now, like years on, you know what I mean? You're like, yeah, of course you guys have egos. You are the greatest rock band. I get it. Your whole bit, like I get it. Am I interested? Nah, but I get it.
Yeah.
it.
Right.
So.
Right. All right. So to wrap this out, we're talking about how like the bleeding through the DIY community stuff and everything like that. And it's been really interesting because as somebody who studies literature, I'm not a fan of literary people.
Yeah, of course.
Large. Yeah. And I mean, all that's
Dorks.
implied.
Yeah.
All that's implied.
For sure.
So, with these, within like these spaces that you functioned in historically, where there was a lot less care over how things were received and being in like a antagonistic grindcore band, whatever,
Sure.
moving into these spaces where you are working on literature or collaborating on projects that have a little bit more stakes. And I'm asking this because it's something that I'm mostly trying to impart onto my students. That sense of like, you're good. We're just working on the placefulness of like working in the context or whatever. Collaboration and feedback often happens outside of totally formalized systems when you're working on something like a more independent book publishing project or going back to the records and everything like that, with peers shaping each other's work. I mean, I've listened to you and Jeff Garlock speak enough times on podcasts over the years to where
yeah,
it's neat to hear. But how do you think these informal networks of feedback within like DIY communities going on into not the music end of it, but the more literary end? How do you think they've influenced your responses to feedback over the years? Have these interactions ever reshaped a project in ways you didn't expect?
I very famously do not take notes on projects at all.
Right.
Like, you know what I mean? So on, even if it's like, so we can just break this down first as like friends who hire me.
Mm-hmm.
You just because we've eaten dinner together doesn't mean you're going to tell me what the art's going to look like.
Yeah.
So, and I think that to a certain degree, it's like I truthfully, before Chelsea, before working on this megalopolis thing, let's say, it's like the biggest thing I've ever been involved in. You know, it was the smallest, drop in the ocean for me, but like for that whole project, but like it's the biggest thing I've ever been tapped to do. Is like that I didn't make my own opportunity for.
Mm-hmm.
And it is actually because I've made my own opportunities that I got this. You know what I mean? Like I believe that like you've got to just make your own opportunities to make things happen a lot of the times.
Right.
So sometimes that's just cold calling artists that you love and building that Rolodex. And that's one of the greatest, for lack of a better word, joys of my career as Stake Mountain is amassing creatives in every single field that I really love, that because I do stupid art kind of gave me a gateway into being able to realize people react well if you're just one of them.
Yeah.
And you're reaching out.
Right.
You know what I mean? And I try not to be that way when people reach out to me now, especially as I was saying, as I got older and people are like taking the time to tell me that they like something. I don't want to be an asshole about it. And I give them just as much time as I give fucking, Elijah from Online Ceramics, you know what I mean? Telling me he likes something, you know what I mean? Like, it's important to me to try to even that playing field. But as far as like, I don't think that like peer to peer or anything like that has ever really shaped the work. I do believe that the only time I've actively made something, I actively tried to make something other than what it was with Chelsea and the Holy Day.
Right.
Almost as an exercise.
Yeah.
And not that I would be embarrassed going into like who her audience is, who are buying her books, whether it be Jeff Rickley Bleed Over fans or people who love Chelsea or whatever, or people just looking for one to support a woman run like literary hub, whatever the case be. Like, I thought it was like, I didn't have a crisis of faith. And I think I've maybe explained that as that before, like as far as the Holy Day goes, but like realistically, it was just like, oh, well, I have an excuse now for the first time ever to try to clean something up.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, and it wasn't like she brought me in because she likes ragtag Chris Norris.
Right.
She likes fucking rough and ready, fucking shit talking. We've been friends for years. And her husband and I have been friends for even longer.
Right.
And so like she had a not friendship obligation, like to, you know what I mean? Because she's a straight shooter. And if she didn't like Hunchback 88, she would have not even said anything to me.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But she liked Hunchback 88. And so when it came down to the Holy Day, she truly liked it. You know what I mean? Like, and so I was like, that's really exciting. I was like, I think now that somebody who's not a no slight on any of the low rent, experimental, transgressive fucking hubs that are out here that we're all friends with, that we're all buddies with. I'm not going to say any names because I don't want to hurt anybody's very sensitive, experimental, fucking literary feelings. Is that like, I was like, oh, this is like more legit. And it's going to be the only time I might get a chance at a legit person being actually wanting to put something out.
Yeah.
Like legit in a sense that's like it's closer to a real place.
Well,
real,
yeah.
For everybody.
We talked about that like NPR readership there.
Yeah, you know what I mean? There's like a whole wave of people who are civilians, essentially, that like, adventurous civilians. And I always say this about readers, and I think I've said this to like Dan Ozzie on an interview somewhere before. Like, it's that like readers, the cool thing about people who love books is one, like I said, they'll finish anything.
Yeah.
They'll waste 12 hours of their fucking day finishing something they don't like. That's fucking crazy to me. But two, like they are the most adventurous people, like that will go out of their lane.
Yeah.
You know, and like to consume a art that is against odds with what they are. Most people aren't like that.
Right.
Like most consumers, like you see whether you see fucking, you know, the vegetable eating fucking movie crowd who are just like, I'm only watching Rivette and I'm only watching Romer and I'm only watching good art and I'm only watching 3-hour fucking Polish movies, but they would never in their fucking life watch a Jess Franco movie and let alone a fucking Thor movie. Yeah. You know what I mean? But then on the flip, you see a bunch of fucking Marvel fucking deadheads out there who are just like, I don't want to watch anything but Captain America. Listen, I get that. I love Captain America just like the next idiot. And those movies are trash. But I've seen every single Marvel movie because I don't mind them because I read comics as a kid.
Right.
And like, yes, they are the death knell of fucking like cinema and everything that everybody who's smart, who has like an eye towards like film theory and everything and business, looking at the business of Hollywood. Yeah, they've destroyed the whole operation. But we were getting there. It wasn't going to be Marvel. It was going to be fucking just how this all works. And the pandemic accelerated it. That's all it is.
Right.
If it wasn't Marvel, it would just be, we would just get all these studios keep producing things like Constantine and like all these dumb like tentpole movies. It wasn't Marvel's. It's not Marvel's fault. They just did it the best. Most of the movies are bad. Doesn't really matter. Basically what I'm saying is that I don't remember what I'm saying. And I think that like, I really don't even know how I got to Marvel. So like to me, like with Chelsea, it was like just a chance to, like I said, like to the best of my abilities, without any like anybody helping me or guiding the way. Like me trying to be as, like to me, the Holy Day is the most normal thing I've ever done in my life.
Yeah.
Like as far as art goes, and like it ain't that normal, and people still say it's like a really hard thing to read. And I think to myself, damn, this is like the cleanest fucking, like, this makes the most sense to me, you know?
Yeah.
But it's the 70 pages of fucking free form poetry at the top of the fucking thing that you don't know where it fits in that throws everybody off.
Yeah, it definitely, because I think I heard the podcast where you explained the like overture nature of it and all of that. Because I read it when I was flying from Kalamazoo, Michigan back. I don't want to say that I had like a concern over it being, because you were really talking up how much more conventional it seemed to be, especially compared to Hunchback 88. And I'm not such an insufferable fan of anything to where I'm just like, oh man, that freaks me out. But yeah, the 70 pages or so of the opening poetry and everything like that, I see where it would be off-putting for a lot of people, but I mean, you didn't depart that far from it far from like the stylistics of like Hunchback 88. It was definitely easy to like make more sense of like, oh, okay, this does. I mean, to me, it just more so read like, I don't know. I felt very akin to like, was it Mansion of the Living Dead? Looking at that.
Sure.
That's
okay.
like
That's actually a really good call because that's a massive influence on the book. So the thing that I guess everybody doesn't realize, and why would they? Because like, why would you? Yeah. Is that like that beginning isn't just word salad. It does serve a purpose.
Yeah.
The fact that it's not essentially, it is the end of the book.
Right.
It's just at the beginning. And it's funny, side note, the next printing of the Holy Day, we're doing a civilian version where we move that to the end.
Oh, that's great.
That it starts with like a normal, it's going to be a normal book.
Awesome.
And we're doing it, it's going to be the civilian version for the just one printing. One printing we're going to do, like once it goes into the third printing, which might be a year from now, might be 5 years from now, who knows? But the next printing of it will be the proper version where it just starts like a normal book. And there's the overture, and then the book starts, and it's just normal. And then maybe the ending will make sense.
Sure.
You know, it still won't make any sense. But like overall, for anybody who's read it or reads it or wants to read it, I'm just going to spoiler alert. The bitch is dead. That's 70 pages of fucking brain function dying.
Yeah.
That's all it is. And that's why it's formed like it is. It's not an experimental fucking fuck around. It's not word salad. It's not just doing it to do it. It actually functions as the brain winding down. It is
And
the dying brain by the ocean.
I think that's the thing that gets lost on a lot of people, the preconceptions we tend to have. If somebody has started working on something a little more experimental in the past or has this proclivity, because it's the first time that I sat down to read it was like right after I received it in the mail. And granted, I was writing like 60 pages of research work at that point. So
totally, yeah.
My
I
brain
think I
was
remember you telling me that, yeah.
Yeah, my brain was just fried already. I was like, oh, cool.
No thanks.
Yeah, I can't do it right now. I need to go sit in silence instead.
I have enough homework. Yeah. Yeah.
But then when I picked it back, I took it with me to a conference I went to, and it was just like, okay, cool. I have like a 14-hour travel day on my way home.
Sure.
I can bang this out. And I mean, I think it does become pretty obvious. I don't know. Like I'm not very good at what I do with the literature academic shit, but it became clear. Yeah, this does play out the space on the page and all that pretentious shit that people talk about.
The form of it is the ocean. That's how I base the actual design of that beginning text, is that it's literally just waves coming in and out. It's just breaking apart and the brain is dissolving and everything. And it's like, I'm not going to tell people how to read it. I'm not going to tell people that they need to understand that this is really the case, but you read it how you read it. Pick it up how you pick it up. And some people have galaxy brain and they pick it up. And some people just go, okay, this guy's fucking around with me for 70 pages and book starts. Oh, the book's starting. Oh, here's the credits and everything else. And you know what I mean? But like, I mean, that's why the Debbie Deb song is in there. It's literally the song that plays over the end credits.
I was so excited about that, because I think that's like when you started formalizing the writing project, I had posted like Lookout Weekend. You're
Debbie,
like,
you did,
it's in my book. I was like, oh fuck yeah,
with a sign off from Deb. So like we actually had to pay for licensing.
Is that how you have the picture of her with the book, or was that just somebody?
No. That came after. The deal with Deb is that like my friend Mike, who was in a bunch of Tampa bands, lives in Newport Richey, and Deb lives there, and he's a bartender, and she comes to his bar, and he posted something at some point in time, like a picture of her, with like probably Lookout Weekend playing or whatever.
Yeah.
And I was like, yo, and he's like, dude, she like comes to my bar. And I was like, bro, like I've been trying to, like, I want to put like Lookout Weekend into the new book I'm writing. And he's like, oh, that's sick. And I sent him a copy of Hunchback 88 and he gave it to her. And she was like, okay. And then she doesn't own the rights to the song.
Right.
Knucklehead, the producer, whose name I can't think of right now, does. So we had to pay to use it.
Yeah.
Like, it wasn't expensive. It was just like a licensing fee. It was like $300 or something like that.
Sure.
But she was also like, she was this, she was basically like Hunchback 88, like looks cool, like whatever, dude. And then he ordered a copy of Holy Day, and I sent him a copy to give to her, and I like autographed her.
Yeah.
And it was like really like, there have been few things in my life that I've been like, oh fuck yeah, that was awesome about any of this shit. You know what I mean? And that was like probably in my top 3. Like, is like, does Deb being like, what's up with the fucking copy? I was like, shh.
Oh, I lost my mind when I saw that.
Yeah, dude. It was so exciting. But she like just hangs out in Newport Richey, dude. Like she's just chilling, does her weird, like they fly her to Germany to play a fucking freestyle fucking festival. And she does that like once a year, makes some money off of that. And but it was fucking cool, man. But anyways, like I live above this like store that it's like, it's like a ad hoc fucking like package store. It's like FedEx, UPS, DHL, you know what I mean? Like everything goes there. It's just, you can go there and just send out your shit. That's actually really helpful for all the returns that we do in this house. And every time I go in there, the owner's like a little bit old. He's about like 15 years older than me, and they always have it on the freestyle channel.
Oh, hell yeah.
Always Debbie Deb time. So I like showed him the picture. I was like, what's up, dude? And he's like, and then I had to have a conversation about like how I wrote a book, but it was like worth it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It was like, you kind of get this, and not many people get this. So because like there is just like New York City is like freestyle central. You know what I mean? So there is like a whole channel just plays that shit all the time.
Oh yeah.
You know what I mean? It's just like, I can't remember what it is. It's like 101 or something. But that, dealing with Chelsea and dealing with that is like one of the only times like I took into consideration the audience a little bit. Not to change anything, but I just like, this is an opportunity to clean up. Like in a way that like most of the time, like I'm not too lazy, but I just feel like I think that like C- material is fine for everybody.
Yeah.
And most of the time, like people can't tell the fucking difference anyways, like, so whether it's my art or anything, but this one, I just like, well, this is a really good example of like, it was interesting to see like what could happen because of Chelsea's heat on the press, Rickley coming before me, and obviously like Rickley having a fan base that is fucking nuts, like of just people who just love him, love Thursday. And I was like, oh, this is a really interesting opportunity, to see what will happen, if anything. Like, will I sell more copies if it's a little bit more readable?
Right.
But again, like I said, like I, like I wish I could write normal. Like I wish I could write just something that's really so basic bitch.
Yeah.
I wish my brain worked that way. And I think that was like a goal inside of that was these, could I do it a little bit? Like what here works? You know what I mean? But I always I describe the Holy Day as something that is made up of the things that happen in between the interesting things.
Yeah.
It's like the scenes are all like something could have happened. I didn't write that part. I wrote she's at the diner hanging out, eating food and falling asleep, listening to a tape that she found in the fucking, basically a tape of Jess Franco.
Yeah.
Us, like, essentially with this Castilian lisp, you know what I mean? Like, and so like I liked that. I wanted to write a book that was like the ambient pieces. And I always I've referenced before, maybe I did in Chelsea's thing too, but there's a Cameron Crowe movie that was made about a decade ago called Aloha with like Bradley Cooper and Emma Stone and Bill Murray's in it.
Oh yeah.
And it's a bad movie. I'm a Cameron Crowe head. I love Crowe. I don't think he's ever made anything bad, but I think this is a legitimately bad movie. There's a reason why it's like the last movie he really made. You know what I mean? So, and when I was watching it, I started thinking to myself, God, this movie is made up of all the pieces that they would cut from a normal movie. You know what I mean? It just like felt like the somebody did like an assembly of like all the things they cut.
Right.
That like kind of told a story, but wasn't the good angles and wasn't the smartly lit parts. They're like, this is a bad scene of this. Let's cut this. And I was like, that's what this movie's really like. And then it became like a movie that I really liked. I was like, this actually is a really good movie from me. And I was like, man, what a cool way to like try to write something like that, And that was like one of the initial things for the Holy Day. It also started as a script, but rapidly became something else very quickly. Like once I was turning it into what it turned into. But like Chelsea says, like she read the book. We were going to get ready to copy edit it and make sure that all my things were correct or that I signed off on the things that were incorrect because they were on purpose. And then she was like, fuck, dude, I've got something to do. I'll come back to you in a month or so. And when she came back, there was like 2,000 edits to the book.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
And I had added a whole chapter, and she was like, oh, she still loved it. But she was like, fuck, dude, 2,000 edits and a whole another chapter, a whole another fucking 500 plus words. And I was like, yeah. Dude. So now get that copy edited.
Yeah, you're a publisher's dream in that regard.
Yeah. So, but yeah, I think that's it. I think that's hopefully the answer to your question.
Chris, I appreciate you taking the time to talk to me and talk to some college kids who don't know Stake Mountain, and I think one of my students knew who Against Me is. I don't know how intimate that relationship is, but no, I really appreciate your time and you sitting down to talk.
Of course. I'm sorry that I talked for 2.5 hours. But hopefully something in here will be exciting for somebody listening,
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know if I had wisdom to share, but you know, it was a fun talk, and again, like a very uncommon talk for me, which I appreciated
Oh, for
these
sure.
questions because they're not things I think about. So,
Yeah.
or I don't get asked that. You know what I mean? Like, so.
I try to be as tempered and metered as I can in these things. So I appreciate the recognition there. But
Of
all right,
course.
anybody listening, this has been Chris Norris, and thanks.
Thank you.